This must be a prank, a poorly thought out, wicked joke, but who would do such a thing? Who would risk ruining a good marriage for a laugh? These thoughts remained with me after that first phone call. It all started 6 months ago as I sat in my office at Apex Office Integrators, waiting for my 2-hour conference call on a Wednesday afternoon. I am a project manager at Apex and am responsible for 3 or more network integration projects simultaneously. This meant that I spent a lot of time on the phone, participating in conference calls to get updates on my projects or solve problems and put out fires. It was only 1:30 p.m., so I was browsing the internet, looking at a digital camera I wanted to buy, when my phone rang. I reached out and picked up the phone, never taking my eyes off the computer screen. Hello, Apex Office Integrators. This is Mike Fulton speaking. Are you Mike Fulton? Asked a female voice. Yes. How can I help? I don't think you can help me, but I hope I can help you, she said. Help me? How? Is your wife's name Brenda? Yes. Does she have a good friend named Cara? She asked. Yes, I answered suspiciously. What's the matter? I just wanted to warn you that if you don't take action, your wife will have an affair. What? Who is this? It's some kind of joke because it's not funny, I said. Her statement was so unexpected that I did not know how to react to it. Should I just laugh at her or get angry? Or maybe I should just hang up. I can't tell you who I am. I just wanted to give you a chance to prevent this before it happens. I knew my wife and knew that she would never cheat on me, so this call had to be some kind of prank. But who would pull such a cruel prank? If I believed what this woman said, I would be extremely offended and angry. Why would anyone want to put me through this? I wondered if the caller knew it was a joke, or was she just doing what she was told by someone else? As much as I wanted to hang up, I decided to wait and play the role, at least for a while, to try to figure out who was behind this prank. What makes you think my wife is going to have an affair? I asked as calmly as possible. I heard them talking about it. Who and what did you hear about? I asked. Your wife and her friends Cara and, I think, Francis. They go to a place called Vinny's for lunch every Wednesday and sit at the same table right next to the door opposite the windows. I also go there for lunch on Wednesdays and sit at the table next to them. Eating alone is boring, so I entertain myself by eavesdropping on other people's conversations, she said. Cara was Brenda's best friend, and they had been friends since college. We all went to the same college, and I met them at the same party. Cara had been dating her husband John for over a year when I started dating Brenda. We have been close friends ever since. The name Francis was unfamiliar to me. I've never heard Brenda mention anyone named Francis. And you heard how my wife was planning to have an affair? I asked. Not really. Let me explain. Your friend Cara has been telling your wife about her romances over the last couple of years and how exciting they are. She also tried to persuade Brenda to have an affair. She tells your wife that the affair will not only be exciting, but will also make sex with you more interesting. Until now, your wife has been indecisive, but over the past few weeks, I have noticed that her objections to Cara's proposals have become less persistent, and she has even begun to ask questions and show more interest in the topic than before. I just think you need to do something to stop it before it's too late, she said. Why do you care? Why are you telling me this? I asked. I just don't want anyone to ruin their marriage because they took bad advice from a friend, the caller said. Are you saying Brenda is showing more interest lately? How long have you been listening to them talk? I was starting to see holes in her story, but I didn't want to interrupt it. I still had to try to figure out who was bullying me like that. 6 or 7 weeks. What are you going to do about it? She asked. Here's the hook. I wasn't ready to turn her off, but I wasn't going to give in either. I don't know. I need to know more about what's going on before I do anything. Can I call you if I need to? I asked. No, I'll call you if I think we need to talk again. I knew she would never give me her number, but I had to try. My only options were to either ignore it all or act like I could believe what she was saying in hopes of finding out who she was and why someone would do this to me. Okay, you call me, I said. Please call. I hung up and sat for a minute, trying to comprehend the call. I knew what the caller said was nonsense. Brenda would never cheat on me. In the 13 years we have been together, 2 years of dating and 11 years of marriage, Brenda has always been a faithful and devoted wife. She has never given me a reason to doubt her love for me, and she always seems to find new ways to demonstrate how much she loves me. For my part, I can honestly say that I was just as faithful and devoted to her. There are two other reasons why I couldn't believe Brenda would cheat on me. Our children, Kevin and Michelle. Kevin is 6 years old and Michelle is 8. I know Brenda would never do anything to hurt our children, so I knew it was all fake. I had to put the call out of my mind and proceed to the 2-hour conference call. The issues raised during the conference call kept me occupied for the rest of the day, which helped me not think about the strange call at work, but it popped into my thoughts again as I was driving home. When I left my office, I fully intended to tell Brenda about the call, but on the way home, I decided that this was not the best course of action. I didn't want to bother Brenda unnecessarily. I'll tell her everything as soon as I figure out who's behind the joke or prank or whatever it was. Throughout the evening, I continued to think and rethink whether I should tell Brenda about the call. In the end, it didn't matter what I decided, as the opportunity to talk to Brenda didn't arise that night. Kevin and Michelle kept me busy helping them with their homework, and when they finally went to bed, I got a call from one of my project managers in California. While I was talking to him, Brenda came into my office, kissed me on the cheek, and whispered that she was tired and was going up to the bedroom. When I finished the call, Brenda was already asleep. Thursday was a busy day for me, and I put all thoughts of yesterday's phone call out of my mind. In the morning, I thought I might get a call again, but by lunchtime I had already forgotten about it, and there was no call. On Friday, I was also expecting a call, but when it didn't come, I simply put the call and the annoyance associated with it out of my mind. As soon as I was able to forget about the call, it simply faded into the background, and I didn't think about it until the following Wednesday. Wednesday morning went very well, and it seemed that the day would pass peacefully. That afternoon in my office, there was Jake Peterson. Jake is the executive project manager with responsibility for the Northeast. We were discussing some common problems that came up in our projects and trying to find a common solution when my phone rang. "This is Mike Fulton speaking," I replied. "Hey, Mike, it's me again." A familiar voice was heard. "Could you wait a minute, please?" I said. "I have someone in my office." "Certainly." "Jake, I need to take this call. Is that okay?" I asked. "No problem," Jake said, standing up and heading towards the door. Before he left, he turned and said, "Is this your girlfriend?" Then he laughed and closed the door behind him. "I'm back." "You didn't do anything, right?" asked the voice. "What?" "You didn't do anything to stop your wife, did you?" This question caught me off guard, and it took me a little while to come up with an answer. "I haven't decided how to handle this yet," I said. "Is there anything else I should know?" "Have you forgotten that today is Wednesday?" "No," I said, but the significance of the environment did not immediately dawn on me. "That's right, you remember that today is Wednesday, but you forgot that your wife had lunch with her friends again today," said the voice. My stomach muscles tensed involuntarily when she said that. Trying to remain calm, I asked, "So you overheard their conversation today?" "Yes, and I'm telling you that you need to quickly decide what you're going to do, or it may be too late," she said. "Why do you say that?" "It wasn't Kara who brought up the affair today, it was your wife who did." It was impossible. I knew she would never do this. I was angry again. How can I get to the bottom of this if I don't know who my caller is? What did Brenda say? "Your wife asked Kara if she went on one of her secret dates last week." "That doesn't mean Brenda is going to have an affair," I said. "No, it doesn't. But when Kara said she went, your wife said she wanted to hear all the juicy details," she said. I didn't know how to react to this. I was trying to play the role of the suspicious husband when all I really wanted was to find out who I was talking to. I tried to think of what I would say if I believed what this woman was telling me. "Sorry, I just find it hard to believe what you're saying," I said. I know this is hard for you, but you have to believe what I tell you. Otherwise, you might be in big trouble later. Can we meet to talk about this? I asked hopefully. No, I'll call you, she said. You better figure this out quickly. The caller hung up before I could say anything else. I was too angry to work after that call, so I went home early. On Wednesdays, Brenda works late. Late does not mean late at night. On Wednesdays, Brenda picks up Michelle and Kevin from school. She drops Kevin off at her mother's and takes Michelle to her Girl Scout reunion. Brenda is an assistant troop leader, so she stays at meetings. After the meeting, she picks up Kevin, and the three return home around 6 o'clock. That Wednesday, I returned home at 3:30 p.m. and went to my office. I took a notepad and began to analyze the problem. As a project manager, I am responsible for ensuring that my projects go according to plan. Whenever a problem arises in a project, the first thing I do is take a notepad and pencil and start breaking down the problem and analyzing it until I find the cause and solution. This is the only way I knew to deal with problems, so I chose this method to solve a new problem. I started by summarizing what the caller told me. Cara brags about the affairs she has had. She tries to persuade Brenda to have an affair. Brenda didn't agree, but is interested. These conversations go on for 6 or 7 weeks. I then made a list of reasons why I thought the story was false. 1. Brenda would never cheat on me. 2. I've known Cara as long as I've known Brenda, and I don't believe she's cheating on her husband John. 3. I knew that Brenda and Cara used to meet for lunch every week, but Brenda had not mentioned their meeting in a long time, and it was unlikely that they were still meeting weekly. 4. The caller mentioned a third woman named Frances. Brenda never mentioned anyone named Frances. 5. The caller said she had been sitting at the table next to them for 6 or 7 weeks straight. I found it hard to believe. The idea that 3 women always sat at the same table and that my caller always ended up at the table next to them sounded far-fetched. 6. Brenda is very observant. She would have noticed if the same person was constantly sitting next to them, and she would also have noticed if that person seemed to be eavesdropping on their conversations. If she thought someone was eavesdropping on them, Brenda would have put a stop to it by either changing the location or choosing a different restaurant for lunch. I then made a list of all the explanations for the call that came to mind. 1. A prank from one of my friends. 2. A prank from one of Brenda's friends. 3. A cruel joke from one of my enemies. 4. A cruel joke from one of Brenda's enemies. 5. A mean joke from my ex-girlfriend. 6. A mean joke from Brenda's ex-boyfriend. 7. Some guy is in love with Brenda and wants to ruin our marriage. 8. Some girl is in love with me and wants to destroy our marriage. 9. In addition to points 7 and 8, it could be a woman in love with Brenda, or a man in love with me trying to consider all options. 10. We are the random target of someone's idea for a good joke. 11. We are the target of a reality show that pranks people to capture their reactions for a TV program. This was a really fantastic version, but I was running out of ideas. There were 7 or 8 other items on the list that were as absurd as TV shows that I no longer remember. The last item on the list was, the caller is telling the truth and Brenda is considering the possibility of an affair. I spent the next hour considering every possibility and reformatting list, moving the least likely options down the list, thereby moving the most likely ones up. I quickly ruled out a prank on the part of my friends or Brenda's friends. None of our friends liked pranks, and none would do anything so vicious. Versions with enemies didn't work either. I didn't have anyone I considered an enemy. I knew there were people who might not like me, but I had never treated anyone so badly that they would do something like that to me. I was also sure that Brenda had no such enemies. Ex-girlfriends. I had 2 girlfriends before I met Brenda, and neither of those relationships ended badly. I only knew of one of Brenda's ex-boyfriends, but they stopped dating more than a year before I met Brenda. I also excluded versions with unconventional love. I went through the list 4 times, making sure I covered every possible factor. When I finished, The TV show version rose to the top of the list, followed by the fact that the caller is telling the truth and Brenda is considering the possibility of an affair. I wasn't happy with the results and didn't think they were right. I knew there was no TV show. It just didn't seem plausible, but the other options didn't seem plausible either. This returned me to the main question. The caller was either telling the truth or lying. If she was lying, why and who else was involved? If she was telling the truth, which I still didn't believe, my marriage was in deep trouble. To find out what the truth was, I had to ask Brenda a few questions. I needed to do this in a way that didn't arouse her suspicion. If she was innocent, as I believed, she would be upset to know that I might not trust her. On the other hand, if the caller was telling the truth and Brenda suspected me of asking questions, she might realize that I knew something. If this had happened, I would never have known the truth. It might have stopped Brenda from having an affair, but I would never have known if she was thinking about it or not. I needed to get information from Brenda gradually so as not to arouse her suspicion. When I heard the garage door open, I destroyed my notes and walked into the kitchen to greet my kids and wife as they entered the house. As soon as the kitchen door opened, Kevin ran up to me and hit me on the thigh, saying, "Hey, Dad, can I go watch TV?" "Yes." "Dad, look what I did at Girl Scouts today," Michelle shouted, showing off the pine cones to which she had glued small candles. "This is for starting a fire in the fireplace. You light a candle and the pine cone lights up. Isn't this a good idea?" "That's a great idea, honey. We can use them this winter when we use the fireplace," I said. Michelle's face lit up, showing that she was pleased with my answer, and then she ran to her brother to watch TV. 45 minutes later, four of us were sitting at the dinner table eating spaghetti. "How was your day?" Brenda asked me. "Almost the same as any other day. My projects have been going pretty smoothly the past few months, so I haven't had the need to put out any fires," I said. "If you need to start a fire, you can use one of my pine cones, Dad," Michelle said, giggling. "I will do so, Michelle. Next time I want to set one of my projects on fire, I'll use one of your pine cones." Michelle laughed and picked up her fork of spaghetti. I turned to Brenda and said, "Have you seen Cara lately?" "I had lunch with her today," she replied. "Why do you ask?" "Is it true?" "I didn't know you were still doing that," I said. "We still have lunch together every Wednesday, but why did you ask if I've seen her?" "It's just that you haven't mentioned her for a long time, and we haven't gone out with Cara and John for almost a year. I thought we should have dinner together sometime." "Do you want to do it this weekend? I'll call Cara and ask her," Brenda said. "Why not? It would be nice to see them again." I established that Brenda and Cara still meet for lunch every week, so I decided to take a chance and dig deeper. "So you still meet for lunch every week? Where do you go?" "We go to Vinny's. This is a small Italian restaurant in a shopping center on Ipy and Y. I knew where the shopping center was. There was a large supermarket, a pharmacy, several small specialty stores, a coffee shop, and Domino's Pizza. I haven't been to that part of town for a couple of years, so I've never heard of Vinny's." "Do you always go to the same place?" I asked. "Yes. They have good food, and it's inexpensive. Most of their business is takeout, so it's easy to find a table, the service is fast, and it's the most convenient place for the three of us," she said. I started to get an unpleasant feeling in my stomach. So far, everything I've learned matches what the caller said. "Three of you? I thought it was just you and Cara," I said. "A college colleague of Cara's started working with Cara about a year ago, and she also comes with us every week." "I know her?" I asked. "I don't think you've ever met Frances. She was Cara's roommate for 2 years, but she had already graduated before you met Cara and I." "So, you three go to lunch every week. Maybe I'll join you someday," I said, watching Brenda's reaction. "That would be great. We'd love to see you." "Yes, sure. The hens want the rooster to join them for lunch. Isn't that why you're going to dinner, to complain about your husbands?" "Certainly, but I would complain about you to your face, so it wouldn't matter if you were there or not," Brenda said, laughing at me. After dinner, I helped Brenda clean up the kitchen, and then we put the kids to bed. This is the best part of my day. I sit on the couch in front of the TV and Brenda sits next to me and rests her head on my shoulder. This only lasts about half an hour, and then Brenda stretches her legs out on the couch and lays her head in my lap. Then I gently run my fingers through her hair and face until she falls asleep. I really love it when she rests her head on my lap, and I can just look at her while she sleeps. I didn't enjoy it as much that night. The seeds of doubt were sown in my brain, and no matter how hard I tried, I could not stop them from growing. Thursday was a difficult day for me. Every time the phone rang, I thought it was my caller again, but the only calls I received that day were for work. One of the calls was from my project manager in Denver. We were migrating a network for a large corporation headquartered there. The project lasted more than a year, but everything went very well. Tom, the project manager, called to ask if I would come do a quarterly project review with the client. I told Tom I would call their VP of it and set up a meeting in about 2 weeks. I had a good relationship with the vice president and was looking forward to the review trip. The trip usually took 4 days. I flew out on the morning of the first day and met with Tom to discuss the schedule and status of the project. Tom informed me of any problems or issues that he wanted to discuss during my meeting with the vice president. The next day I met with Tom's team to get their input. The third day was for my meeting with the vice president. This meeting usually lasted an hour and then ended at the golf course and dinner that evening. The fourth day was for returning home to Richmond. That evening, Brenda told me that we were going to dinner with Cara and John on Saturday, and we went back to our normal evening routine. Friday was busy. I had 3 conference calls, and then an issue arose at my project in Tulsa. I spent most of the day on the phone with a customer, assuring him that the problem will be resolved by the end of the day and that the project will be completed on time. When I got home Friday night, calling Wednesday was the last thing on my mind. When I entered the house, Brenda greeted me at the door with a kiss. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes," she said. "Children are sure to be playing, so we have time to have a quiet drink before eating. What would you want?" Cold beer in a frozen mug is what I fantasized about on the way home. "Sit down, I'll bring it for you." This was not unusual behavior. This is how Brenda always greeted me. I never took it for granted and always found ways to return the favor to her. I was sitting in my favorite chair when she brought the drinks into the living room. Brenda set the drinks down on the coffee table, then walked around to the back of the chair. She whispered, "I thought about you today." I knew exactly what Brenda meant. Every time she said, "I was thinking about you today," it meant that she wanted me to make love to her that night. Our sex life was still good after 11 years of marriage. Most of the time, I was the one who initiated sex, but sometimes Brenda would get in the mood, and her way of telling me was to say that she was thinking about me. Our lovemaking was always good, but on the nights when Brenda initiated sex, it was especially good. Brenda put the kids to bed at 8 o'clock, then came downstairs and invited me to open a bottle of wine. We sat on the couch, drinking wine and cuddling like teenagers until we were sure Kevin and Michelle were asleep. Then Brenda stood up, took my hand, and led me to our bedroom. We made love. Then, as she walked and sipped her wine, Brenda looked at me with her big brown eyes. "Mike, I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks. How do you feel about the idea of having another child?" she asked. "Are you serious?" "Yes. I'm 33 years old, and I don't think I want to risk getting pregnant in 2 or 3 years," she said. "Kevin is turning 7 soon. It seems like if we ever decide to do it, now would be the time." "If you're sure this is what you want, then of course we can do it," I said. "Then we are in agreement. Can I stop taking the pills tomorrow and start trying to get pregnant?" I kissed her nose and said, "Yes, and I think we should practice a little more tonight, right?" "Absolutely," she replied. We made love again. We were silent for a long time, then Brenda broke the silence. "Boy or girl?" she said. "What? Do you want a boy or a girl?" "How about one of each?" I said. "Come on, be serious. Do "Do you want a boy or a girl?" she asked. "I honestly don't know. I would be happy to just have another healthy baby," I said. Brenda kissed me on the cheek and said, "Correct answer." That night, after Brenda had gone to sleep, I lay there for a long time, thinking about having another baby. Then my thoughts turned to the phone calls. If Brenda was considering the possibility of an affair, she certainly wouldn't be planning to stop taking the pill to get pregnant. This was further evidence to support my view that the calls were a hoax. When I finally fell asleep, I had a dream that Brenda actually had an affair and got pregnant. When I woke up and realized that it was just a dream, I was extremely relieved, but at the same time, a dark cloud began to form in my mind. I thought about telling Brenda about the phone calls again, but decided against it. It occurred to me that if I told her about the calls, it might set off a chain of events that would prevent me from ever knowing what they were. I knew that if I told Brenda, she would tell Kara, and who would Kara tell? I could only guess. I figured it wouldn't be long before word got back to the ringleader that I had told Brenda about the call and hadn't fallen for the scheme, whatever it was. And this will be the end. Then there was a small chance that the caller was telling the truth. I needed to know. I couldn't leave it like that. I had to find out the truth. There were no more calls that week, but that didn't help me. I was starting to feel stressed about this mystery with the calls. Saturday night, as Brenda and I got dressed to go to dinner with Kara and John, I hoped that somehow I would release this tension, but I didn't know how that would happen. That evening, my friends and I had a great time. The food was delicious and the conversations were interesting and enjoyable. I subtly observed the interaction between Kara and John, but did not notice anything that would indicate that Kara was cheating on him. Despite the pleasant evening, when we returned home, I still didn't have an answer to what was going on. There were no visible problems between John and Kara. Kara and Brenda didn't look like they had dark secrets they were hiding from John and me. This should have calmed me down, but it didn't. I felt myself getting depressed until Brenda kissed my ear and said, "I was thinking about you today. It's time to have a baby." I followed her to our room where I did my best to make the baby. As soon as we finished, Brenda said, "You know it's too early for me to get pregnant, right? I just stopped taking the pills 2 days ago." "I know," I replied. "Can we try again tomorrow night?" Brenda said, "Of course," and kissed me. It was Monday morning, and I was sitting at my desk when a thought came to me. If my caller was at the restaurant where Brenda had lunch with Kara on Wednesdays, all I have to do is go to that restaurant on Wednesday and find out who she is. I needed to think carefully before doing anything. I kind of threatened to come to dinner one day, and Brenda acted like it would be a good idea. So if I just show up at a restaurant, it won't alarm her. The problem is that if my caller sees me before I identify her, she will disappear and I will lose the chance. I didn't know if the caller knew what I looked like. It is quite possible that she knows, and she will notice me if I approach this restaurant. On Monday, I took a long lunch break and went to a P&W to explore Vinnie's. I couldn't go inside without being seen, but there was parking across the street from Vinnie's where I could park. There was a section of fence that would block most of my car from view, but would allow me to watch the restaurant. I put the binoculars in the car on Monday night so I wouldn't forget them on Wednesday. Tuesday was very busy. I tried to keep myself busy with work, but I hated that I would have to wait until Wednesday to do anything about this problem. I left my office at 11 o'clock on Wednesday and drove to the parking lot across the street from Vinnie's. Luckily, the space behind the fence was free, and I parked there. I looked around to make sure no one was paying attention to me, then took out my binoculars and examined the view. The binoculars zoomed in on the front of the restaurant. The problem was that the glare from the sun on the window made it difficult to see inside the restaurant. All I could do was wait, so I took out the sandwich and soda I'd brought with me and ate my lunch. At 12:05, I saw Brenda, Kara, and another woman, whom I assumed was Frances, enter the Vinnie's. I took the binoculars and pointed them at the window. I could barely make out the three of them sitting down at the table. Well, they were indeed sitting at a table by the window. The caller described it correctly. I couldn't clearly see the table next to them, but it didn't look like anyone was sitting there. I watched the front of the restaurant closely for the next 45 minutes, and although many people went inside, most of them came out with takeout orders within a few minutes. As far as I could tell, no one was sitting at the table next to Brenda and her friends. I waited for them to come out and watched to see if anyone came out after them. Nobody came out. This made me wonder if my caller had come to lunch today, or perhaps she had noticed me and left before I could see her. I had to rush back to the office so I could be there if she called. I wanted her to think I was following my usual routine of eating lunch in the office, not that there was any reason to believe that she would know that was my routine. As I entered my office, the phone started ringing. "Hello, Apex Office Integrators. This is Mike Fulton speaking." "Mike, I'm starting to worry about you," the voice said. "You still haven't done anything to stop your wife." "How do you know I didn't do anything?" "I know because I heard what your wife said at dinner today," she replied. "Did you overhear their conversation again today?" "Certainly. What else do I have for fun? You better start listening to me. I enjoy listening to their conversations, but I don't like giving you bad news." "So why are you calling me then?" "Probably to feel better about listening to their conversations. If I can help you, then maybe I'm not such a bad person," she said. "Either way, things are reaching a dangerous point." "What does it mean?" "This means that today your wife told her friend that the next time you have to go on a business trip, she will have a little affair. It got to the point where Kara suggested a double date and said she knew the right guys for it." I felt the tension build and move up my spine. I didn't know what to say or do. I still couldn't believe that my wife would consider having an affair, but the story I was being told was starting to ring true. My thoughts were interrupted by a voice on the phone. "Well, are you going to do something to stop it, or are you going to let it happen? If you don't plan to do anything, tell me now so I can stop worrying about you." "I can handle this," I said, then hung up the phone forcefully. I thought about everything I had been told over and over, and by the time I got home, I was sure I had a problem, but I still wasn't sure it was my wife. I almost convinced myself that I was right, and that Brenda was not guilty of what the caller was saying, but then I felt like I was hit in the head with a hammer. At dinner, as I was asking the kids about their school day, Brenda asked me a question that made my blood run cold. "Aren't you supposed to have a trip to Denver soon?" I had planned a trip for next week, but because of other things on my mind, I forgot to tell Brenda about it. It was the timeliness of the question that shocked me. My caller said Brenda told Kara that the next time I'm out of town, she'll have an affair, so she asks me if I have a trip to Denver soon. Coincidence? I didn't know what to think. I was trying to put it out of my mind when Brenda asked me if we were going to work on having a baby that evening. Finally, I told Brenda I wasn't feeling well. On Thursday morning, I made a decision to do something I never thought I would do. I made an appointment with a private investigator. I arranged to meet him on Friday morning and then called my client in Denver and postponed the trip for a week. I needed to figure this out before going to Denver. That evening, I took out some photographs from our album to give to the detective. On Friday morning at 9:30, I walked into the AAA detective agency. I knew that the AAA in their name had nothing to do with the quality of their work. They chose this name to be near the top of the list of detective agencies in the phone book. It worked. They were third on the list. They received my order because I never called the first number on the list, and the second agency did not answer the call. I was shown into Brian Dunstan's office, where I spent 20 minutes explaining to him exactly what I wanted him to do, and then handing him the photographs. "Nice woman," he said. The way he said it disgusted me. I already had a low opinion of him. I had no respect for people who profit from the pain of others. Spying on cheating spouses is not a career I could respect. "Yes, she's beautiful," I answered sharply. "Now let me explain my instructions again. First of all, you must be careful. I don't want her to know that you're following her." "No problem, Mr. Fulton," he said. "We are professionals. She won't know we're following her. If you find out she's dating someone and cheating, I want proof." Photos, videos, or sound recordings, it doesn't matter what exactly, as long as it clearly proves what she is doing. Don't worry, Mr. Fulton. If she's cheating, we'll get proof. I need all the evidence by next Thursday, I said. I understand. Why don't you come down next Thursday afternoon around 3 o'clock, and we'll give you everything we've found out. Okay? Next Thursday at 3. See you then, I said. When I left Mr. Dunstan's office, I felt sick. The next few days passed slowly. I managed to hide from Brenda that something was wrong. I didn't want her to suspect anything, and I certainly didn't want to upset the children. I was proud of myself when I was able to make love to Brenda 4 out of 7 nights. On Wednesday afternoon, I sat in my office waiting for the call. At 1:30 p.m., the phone rang. "Did you do anything?" she asked as soon as I said hi. "Everything is under control," I said. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Sorry, I can't say. All I can say is that it will be over by the weekend." She tried to ask me more, but I said that was all I could say and hung up. On Thursday at 3 o'clock, I was sitting in Brian Dunstan's office at the LA Detective Agency. "Mr. Fulton, I have bad news for you. We caught her in the act and we have evidence," he said. Mr. Dunstan handed me the DVD. "Everything is here and it's all admissible in court. All videos on this DVD are filmed in public places. There are no hidden cameras in homes or hotel rooms. We have a DVD player in the next room if you want to watch the video now," he said. "I'll take it with me and look at it privately if you don't mind. If you just give me the bill, I'll pay it on the way." Back in my office, I locked the door, loaded the DVD into my laptop, and pressed play. Dunstan was right. All the evidence was there. The first scene was time-stamped Monday at 9 p.m. and showed her sitting in a booth at some bar with a man. The man put his arm around her neck, his hand on her chest. They kissed a few times, then got up to dance. They hugged on the dance floor. The next scene moved to 10:15 that evening and showed her getting into a car with the same man. Once they were in the car, they became too intimate. The next scene was at 11:05 and showed them entering a motel room downtown at the Ramada Inn. At 1:25 am. They left the room and returned to the bar, where she got into her car and drove home. The next scene was Wednesday morning at 9:07 am. She was with another man sitting in a diner having breakfast. In the next scene, the detective was tailing a car that apparently belonged to this man. At first, I thought she wasn't in the car because her head wasn't visible above the seat. But then, as the car turned into the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse, her head suddenly appeared. The next scene showed the car from a distance. The camera started zooming in until I saw a man having sex with her. It was more than I could bear. I downloaded the video to my hard drive and then copied it to a blank DVD, then deleted the file. I put the DVD in a protective sleeve and then slipped it into a large manila envelope. I put the original DVD in my office safe and went to do my damn task. That evening, I arrived home 20 minutes before Brenda. As soon as the door from the garage to the kitchen opened, Kevin and Michelle rushed into the house without even saying hello to me. Brenda followed them in, smiling. "You came early today," she said. "Just getting ready to make the baby tonight." Brenda laughed. "Good, because I've been thinking about you all day," she said. "Did you take the mail?" "No, I forgot. I'll go get it now." "Sit down, I'll bring it," she said. "I don't want you to tire your kids out before the important task tonight." Brenda returned to the house with the usual assortment of loan offers, real estate advertisements, and other junk. Along with this, she had a large manila envelope. Brenda quickly scanned through the mail and placed everything but the large envelope on the coffee table. She handed me a large envelope and said, "Addressed to you, without a return address." I said nothing. He simply took the envelope and placed it on the table next to him and said, "Would you like a beer?" "Very." I got up and went to the kitchen to get 2 bottles of beer and brought them back. I handed one to Brenda and sat back on the couch. We talked about work for a few minutes, and then Brenda said, "Aren't you curious what's inside the envelope?" "It's probably just an advertising mailing," I replied. "I know, but still, why not open it?" she suggested. I took the envelope and began to tear off the flap when the phone rang. Brenda jumped up and answered, and as I looked at her, I heard the first part of her conversation, at least part of it. Hello? The usual start. Oh, hi. What? Are you serious? Just a minute. At this point, Brenda went into the kitchen, and I could not make out anything she was saying. The call lasted no more than 10 minutes, and as soon as it ended, Brenda returned to the living room and said that she needed to see Kara, that it was urgent. Urgently? What's the urgency? I asked. I don't know. Kara was too upset to speak clearly on the phone. Can you feed the children and put them to bed? Certainly. I've done this before, you know. I know. Sorry, I'm just worried and upset. Brenda grabbed her purse and keys and headed for the door. I'll be back as soon as I can, she said. Don't worry about me. Take care of Kara, I replied. After Brenda left, I went to the family room where Kevin and Michelle were watching TV. Mommy had to go away for a while, so I need to feed you. You have two choices. I can cook liver and onions, or we can go to McDonald's. Choose. Kevin started shouting, McDonald's, McDonald's, McDonald's. Michelle, with her usual sense of humor, said, this is a difficult choice. You know how much I love liver, but I'm sure you don't feel like cooking, so I'll go to McDonald's to make it easier for you. I picked Michelle up and twirled her over my head, then set her down on the floor and started tickling her. You're so funny, I said. Kevin didn't want to be left out, so he pulled me by the hand. My turn. I want to fly like Michelle. I let Kevin fly and then tickled him too. The three of us went to McDonald's and returned home less than an hour later. Then I sent them upstairs to get ready for bed. By 8 o'clock, they were in their beds. Kevin was already asleep, and I was sitting on the edge of Michelle's bed, listening to her talk about something that happened at school. When she finished her story, I kissed her forehead and turned off the light. Then I went downstairs and got a beer. I sat down on the sofa, took a long sip of beer, and then took a large envelope and opened it. I dumped the contents of the envelope onto the coffee table. The envelope contained 2 copies of my Denver itinerary, my airline tickets, hotel reservations, and car rental. I took 1 copy of the route and attached it to the refrigerator with a magnet in the shape of a bunch of bananas. I put the rest of the papers in my briefcase and then picked up a Sports Illustrated magazine and started reading. It was almost midnight when Brenda returned home, and I could immediately tell that she was tense about what had happened with Kara. What's happened? I asked. What? She asked again. What was Kara's urgency? Let me get the beer and I'll tell you what happened, she said. Do you want a beer? Yes. Brenda returned with a beer and sat next to me on the couch. Okay, let's start over. What was Kara's urgency? I asked. Brenda took a deep breath and let it out slowly. John kicked her out of the house this evening. What? John did what? When Kara came home from work at 6:30 p.m., John was waiting for her. He had already packed a suitcase for her and threw it out the door, telling her to leave. Oh my God, I cannot believe it. John has another woman, that's why he kicked her out? I asked. No, of course not. You know John, he would never do that. I was silent for a minute and then blurted out. It's because of Kara. She was with another man. This is true. Brenda looked down and said, Yes, John found out that she cheated on him. Jesus Christ, what's wrong with her? She was married to a great guy. I thought she loved him. She loves him, Brenda said. If she loved him, how could she cheat on him? I don't know. I don't know why she did it, she said. I feel so sorry for her. Do you feel sorry for her? What about John? She cheated on him. I know, but he shouldn't have thrown her out of the house. He also hit her. I did not like it. Did he hit her? He called her a woman of easy virtue. And that's all? I asked. What do you mean, that's all? He hit her. He shouldn't have done that, she said. Are you on her side? She cheated on him. You know how much he loved her. It must have hurt him terribly. If this happened to me, I would do the same thing or even worse. I love you more than anything in the world, but if you hurt me like that, I don't think I could handle it any better than John. I'm not on her side, I just think John should have given her time to talk to him. What is there to talk about? You mean John should have given her time to come up with a lie to explain why she cheated on him, I said. Why are you so angry about this? Brenda asked. I'm angry because I feel John's pain. I bet if John cheated, you wouldn't be so sympathetic to him. Brenda started to say something but stopped. You're Kara's best friend. You have lunch together every week. Did you know she was cheating on John? What? Why are you asking me this? What are you trying to say? Brenda blurted out. Brenda, you have always been honest with me. Please don't start lying now. Did you know that Kara was cheating on John? Brenda couldn't look me in the eyes and then said quietly, Yes. How long? A few months? Did you try to stop her? How? Did you even try? I insisted. No. Then you were an accomplice. By not trying to stop her, you actually encouraged her to do it, I said. No, I didn't encourage her. I didn't like what she was doing. I just didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. That makes you partly responsible for what happened tonight, I said. I myself was surprised at the level of anger I felt towards Brenda at that moment. How can you say it's my fault? I didn't tell her to cheat on John. But you did nothing to stop her from cheating, and now that she's caught, you're on her side. I don't think I know you anymore. Aren't you the one who always talked about the importance of fidelity in marriage? Does this only apply to husbands, or does this not apply to your close friends? Kara made a mistake. She is my friend, and I should support her. She's in a lot of pain. What about John? Don't you think he's in pain? What Kara did isn't just about her and John. Look what this is doing to us right now, I said, and then stood up from the couch. I am going to sleep. Brenda didn't say anything. I lay in bed and thought about my argument with Brenda. I was angry at her for not seeing the damage Kara had caused, and I was angry at myself for getting angry. At least this situation will give Brenda something to think about. Any thoughts of having an affair for a change had to go. When Brenda came to bed half an hour later, I pretended to be asleep so as not to talk to her. The next few days our house was cool. Monday morning, I flew to Denver. I decided not to call Brenda on Monday, so she called me at 9 o'clock, 11 her time in Richmond. Why didn't you call when you got there? She asked. I didn't think you'd want to talk to me. Brenda was silent for a moment and then said, No matter what you thought, you should have called. Okay, sorry I didn't call. This will not happen again. We only spoke for 5 minutes. Brenda said she needed to make sure I got to Denver so she could sleep. She then asked me to call early enough the next day to talk to the kids. Over the next couple of days, Brenda was friendlier when we talked. We both avoided the topic of Kara and John. My flight home on Thursday was scheduled to arrive a little after 7 p.m. I called Brenda before leaving Denver and told her when to expect me at home. Can you buy yourself something to eat on the way home? She asked. I'm having dinner with the children at my parents' place, and you won't make it in time for dinner. No problem. See you at home. My flight arrived on time, and I decided to stop at a small bar and grill that served great burgers. When I walked in, I saw John at the bar with a drink in his hands. I decided to talk to him and find out how he was. When I approached, he was already sitting in the booth, and to my surprise, there was a woman with him whom I did not know. Hello, John. How are you? Mike, good to see you. I'm as good as I can be under the circumstances, he said. Mike, this is my friend Fanny. Fanny, this is Mike. Nice to meet you, Fanny, I said. If it weren't for Fanny, I probably would have gone completely crazy from all this, said John. In that case, I'm very glad to meet you, I said to Fanny. Mike, we're going to have a drink before dinner. Why don't you order a drink and join us? I ordered a beer and sat down on a chair at the edge of the booth. We didn't talk about Kara and what she did. John spent most of his time talking about Fanny. He said he's known her since college. He talked more about his time in college and then asked me about Brenda and the kids. 20 minutes later, John said he needed to go to the toilet. When he left, Fanny smiled at me. Fanny? I think it's a nickname. I guess your name is Francis, right? Right. You're good at guessing, she said. Fanny, it's my job to solve problems, I said. How long have you been in love with John? Since I met him in college. You were Kara's roommate, weren't you? Yes. You're really good. So you used me to get rid of Kara, I said. Yes. I'm sorry, but I couldn't do it myself. I didn't want her to know that I had betrayed her, and I didn't want to be the one to tell John that his wife was cheating on him. Are you happy with what you did? I don't feel bad about it. Look, if Kara hadn't started cheating on John, I would have stayed in the shadows forever. I would never do anything to hurt them both. But when she started bragging about cheating on John, I had to stop it, and why not help myself by doing it? But why did you have to bring Brenda and me into this? There was no one else. Sorry for dragging you in, but I couldn't let her get away with what she did to him, she said. Fanny, how did you know that I would tell John about Kara's infidelities? I asked. I've been having lunch with your wife every week for over a year. She constantly talks about you. She painted a pretty clear picture of someone with high moral standards, and I took it from her description that you won't let Kara continue to cheat and eventually John will find out the truth. It was brilliant to do it anonymously. John thinks that the wife of one of Kara's lovers hired a detective to follow him and then sent the photos to John. I think I have one more question for you, I said. You lied about Brenda wanting to have an affair, didn't you? Yes, I needed to say this to get you involved. In fact, Brenda was very upset about this, but she never told Kara about it. Brenda and I discussed this several times. Brenda hoped that Kara would come to her senses and stop cheating. I never told Brenda this, but I hoped John would catch her. So Kara never tried to convince Brenda to try cheating, I asked. Actually, Kara suggested it once and Brenda made it clear she would never do it. This is where the idea to call you came from. I distorted the facts a little, but the basis was Kara's proposal, she said to Fanny. I wasn't sure whether I hated Fanny or admired her resourcefulness. She found a way to tell John about Kara's infidelities and then support him in his difficult time. Before I could say anything else to Fanny, I saw John returning from the toilet. We finished our drinks, and before leaving, John said to me, I don't know what the future holds, but I hope that you and Brenda will still consider me your friend. I'm sure it will, John. It was very nice to meet you, Mike, she said. Fanny, and a sly smile appeared on her face for a moment. Mutually, I said. After they left, I ordered a cheeseburger and fries and another beer. While I was eating, a strange feeling came over me. It was a feeling of euphoria, and it took me a few minutes to understand why I was feeling this way. All the tension of the last weeks has gone away. Even though I kept telling myself that I didn't believe Brenda would cheat on me, part of me was worried that she might. When Fanny said that Brenda had never shown any interest in cheating, and in fact made it clear that she would never do it, the significance of this did not immediately sink into me. This realization hit me suddenly. This was the best cheeseburger I've ever had in my life. As soon as I finished dinner, I called Brenda to tell her I was heading home. Brenda said she was almost ready to move out from her parents' place and would be home in half an hour. Suddenly, half an hour seemed like an eternity. I arrived home 15 minutes before Brenda. I was so excited after talking with Fanny that I couldn't sit still. My head was buzzing with emotion. I needed to apologize to Brenda for the way I acted the night John kicked Kara out. I wanted to hug Brenda and tell her how much I loved her. I wanted to make love to her. I wanted to grab her as soon as she walked through the door and make love to her right there in the kitchen, but I knew I couldn't do that. I won't be able to do any of this until the kids are asleep. It suddenly occurred to me that Brenda was mad at me when I went to Denver. I wonder if she's still angry. Returning home might not go the way I wanted. I could spend the evening trying to get Brenda to forgive me for being too hard on her, because she didn't try to stop Kara from ruining her marriage. I remembered how married colleagues would brag about their conquests on business trips. I didn't approve of their behavior, but I never said anything. I think I was as complicit as Brenda was with Kara. The only reason I was so hard on Brenda was because I tried to use what happened with Kara as a warning that if she cheated on me, she would suffer the same thing that happened to Kara. After learning later that Brenda had never thought about cheating, my behavior became indefensible. I would never be able to tell Brenda the truth about why I did what I did, so I hoped she would accept my apology and forgive me. Another problem I needed to solve was how I solved my problem. I hired a detective to follow Kara and gather evidence of her infidelities, and then sent it to John. I destroyed their marriage to save mine. John found out the truth about Kara, and she got what she deserved, but I'm not sure the way I did it was right. Maybe I should have talked to Kara and brought her back to her senses. Suddenly, I said out loud what I was thinking. I did a selfish thing to save my marriage, and I would do it again. I feel bad for John, but it's not my fault that Kara cheated on him, and there's no reason to think she would ever stop. I was sitting on the living room couch when I heard the garage door open and wondered whether I should wait here or go out to the kitchen to meet Brenda and the kids. I decided to stay on the couch. When the kitchen door opened, I didn't hear the usual noise. Michelle and Kevin never enter the house quietly. I waited another minute for the kids to burst into the living room, but they didn't. I turned to look towards the kitchen and saw Brenda standing in the doorway. "Where are the children?" I asked. "They stay overnight with my parents. Tomorrow is school day for teachers, so there will be no classes," Brenda explained. Brenda was wearing a white skirt and a red blouse. I always loved it when Brenda wore red. "You look great," I said. "Thank you. I know you like this red blouse on me. That's why I put it on." Suddenly, I felt that everything would be fine. Brenda walked over to me and stood in front of me. "I need to tell you something," she said, "so please don't interrupt me. I've thought a lot about what you said to me last week, and now I understand what you meant. I had to do something to stop Kara. I think I always knew her affairs would end this way. I'm very ashamed of this. I'm sorry I argued with you about this. Brenda, you don't need to apologize to me. I went too far too. Kara was your best friend, and you didn't know how to deal with her cheating on John. Looking back, I'm not sure I would have done better if our roles had been reversed. I think this situation was more emotionally charged because both John and Kara were our friends. My anger and disappointment was caused by what Kara did to John, but was directed at you, which is unfair, but I think you did the same and directed your disappointment at me. What happened to John and Kara is very sad, but we can't let it be our problem." I extended my hand to Brenda, and she came over to me, sat on my lap, and put her arms around my neck. "I love you so much. I tried to be mad at you, but when you didn't call me on Monday, my heart almost broke. Then I realized what you just said, that it's their problem and we can't make it ours," Brenda said. I pulled Brenda towards me and kissed her. "Besides, we have our own problem to solve," I said. Brenda pulled back and looked into my eyes. "What is our problem?" she asked. "How can I get you pregnant if I don't make love to you?" Brenda's face softened and blossomed into a beautiful smile. "Well then, buddy, you better start making love to me," she said. When I woke up in the morning, Brenda was already in the kitchen. I put on shorts and a t-shirt and went for a cup of coffee. Brenda sat at the kitchen table with the morning newspaper and a cup of coffee. "By the way, you were good last night." "Thanks, you too. You know, maybe last night was that time." "What? Last night was the middle of my cycle," Brenda said. "We'll have to do it again tonight to be sure," I said. Well, we didn't get to do it again that night and the next few nights. Kids, work, and visiting parents all conspired against us. But a few weeks later, we found out that Brenda was pregnant. That evening, as Brenda told me the news and we were getting ready for bed, I thought about something. I asked Brenda if she would ever tell this child that he or she was conceived on the stairs. "Not until we are very old," she replied. "By the way, I was thinking about you today." Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.